Hi, welcome to Buffzone here at Liquor Mart in downtown Boulder, 15th and Canyon. Home for all your tailgating needs. Got
one more tailgate.
Yeah, one more tailgate this week against Kansas State. So come on by and get all your stuff. And if you, speaking of this week's game, if you go to the BOCO link on Buffzone, you can go there and get 4 tickets for $12 a piece, or $12 tickets basically, for the game this weekend. And so take advantage of that. I'm Kyle Ringo. This is Neil Woelk. We cover the Colorado football program for the Daily Camera newspaper. Neil, last week was kind of a historic week. We all know Coach Hawkins got fired, replaced by Coach Brian Cabral on an interim basis. And the Buffs responded against Iowa State by going out and getting their first victory in 6 weeks. What was your impression of the whole week?
Just an outstanding, number one, an outstanding game. Brian said it this morning in his press conference. They played well in every phase of the game, which we have not seen all year. It was by far their most complete game. And against a pretty good Iowa State team. I don't think Iowa State's a world beater by any means, but that was a team that took Nebraska to overtime, beat Texas Tech, and beat Texas A&M this year. So a decent Iowa State team, and Colorado dominated them from beginning to end. And so I thought it was a great for the Brian.
Yeah, now they got to pick it up this week. As Brian was talking about today in his press conference, they got to raise it up another notch or two against Bill Snyder's Kansas State Wildcats at Folsom Field this weekend. Senior day, final home game of the year, final Big 12 conference game ever to be played in Boulder. And there's a lot riding on it for both teams, particularly the Buffs, who are, in must-win territory. Obviously, they have to win to keep any chance of a bowl game alive. What do you expect from the Kansas State team that's coming in here?
I expect the same thing you'll see from Kansas State, and Brian Cabral said it this morning. It's a Bill Snyder coach team. They play a very physical style of football. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but they're well coached, fundamentally sound, and they've got a lot to play for. Kansas State, they're looking to go to a decent bowl game, and every win for them is going to take them up in that, in that arena. So I expect Kansas State to come here, not be surprised. I think Iowa State, they kind of caught Iowa State by surprise. They're not going to catch Bill Snyder by surprise.
Yeah. Coach Cabral was talking about how every Kansas State game every year is sort of a physical torture test for the Buffs, and left tackle Nate Solder agreed with him when he was talking this morning. One thing you always see from Kansas State teams, particularly those coached by Bill Snyder, is teams that don't beat themselves, teams that run the ball, play good against the run on defense, and have excellent special teams. Bill Snyder's teams just for some reason have a knack, and Coach Cabral chalked it up to good coaching, but they have a knack for making big plays in the kicking game, and that's something, if you're a Colorado fan, you got to worry about going into this game, because as we all know, Colorado hasn't fared particularly well in the kicking game over the course of the past.
Particularly well.
Yeah.
That might be the nicest thing I've ever heard you say about CU's special teams.
Hey, come on.
They've been rotten in special teams. Okay.
All right. Fair enough. That's true. They haven't been good. Let's just say that. And
but they were good last week.
Yeah,
they had the little kick return where they faked a pitch. Arthur Jaffe takes it back 89 yards to set up a touchdown. Eric Goodman made his field goals. They punted without any disasters. So I thought that might have been their best special teams performance of the year.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing they have to contend with this week too is they're facing that big running back Daniel Thomas, who's coming in here. One of the leading rushers in the Big 12 conference. He's tough to tackle. The Buffs had their problems with him last season in Manhattan, and it always starts there. Coach Cabral said this morning they have to win the battle up front. The game is going to be won on the offensive and defensive lines, and I agree with him. They have to play well there.
No doubt. I mean, Bill Snyder's not going to try and trick you to death. He's not going to try and run anything fancy on you. He's just going to try and pound you. And he's just going to keep pounding and pounding until he finally gets what he wants. And I think that's what this team is going to, that's what they're going to see in Kansas State this weekend, is a ball control offense that, eats up some clock, gets some scores, gets your defense tired and tries to wear you down that way. And I think that's what they've been good at. And they don't quit. I mean, Missouri jumped up on them last week. I think Missouri was up a couple touchdowns on them. K-State came back and made it a close game. And that's another trait of Bill Snyder's teams is they play right to the end.
You know, there's going to be 15 seniors who run out on Folsom Field behind Ralphie for the final time this week. The group includes, obviously, Cody Hawkins, the former coach's son, Nate Solder, who has, you know, everybody agrees has a future in the NFL. Jimmy Smith, the cornerback, probably has a future in the NFL. Jaleel Brown, Scotty McKnight might be there. And then it includes some guys like linebackers, Mike Sapili and B.J. Beatty. And this is the first class that is pretty much entirely Dan Hawkins' class, although Nate Solder technically was recruited by Gary Barnett's staff initially anyway. But when you think of this group of seniors and everything they've gone through and experienced at CU, what sort of comes to mind?
You know, I think it's a good bunch of kids, and I think they're better football players than they've had the opportunity to show for whatever reason. I think those are some pretty good players that you just named. And, you know, what I'd like to see for them is have these last 2 games that they play here in the regular season, have a chance to come out and enjoy them, show that they are good football players. I think they've been outstanding members of the community. They've done a lot of things in that regard. And I hope people will remember them in a good way. And, you know, obviously I'm a little bit biased because I like all the Colorado football teams, but I'd like to see people remember them in the right way.
You know, what I would like to see this week, I'm expecting this to be a close game. And it might just come down to a field goal at the end. And considering everything that the young man has been through, it would be sort of a fairy tale ending for his time at Folsom Field if Eric Goodman, the place kicker for the Buffs, had a chance to go out there and win a game for his team. The way we all remember him doing a few years ago against West Virginia in overtime, the night he got awarded a scholarship. And I think that would be kind of neat to see something like that happen. And I would like to, you know, I guess I'm hoping that something like that happens as we hear from the voice of God.
The voice of God.
But, yeah, that would be interesting to see something like that happen for a senior in his last game. So let's get to it. What do you expect to happen on Saturday?
You know, I think it's going to be a close game. I like the attitude that Brian Cabral has brought to this team, and he's done it in an amazingly short period of time. If you look and see, I just thought there was a different attitude on that team last week. I thought there was an attitude of wanting to go out and play well. They didn't make mistakes, and so I think Brian brings that to the team. I expect to see it again this weekend, a close game. I like Colorado playing at home. I always think Colorado has an edge when they're playing at home. Colorado wins this game about 27-22.
27-22. I can get on board with that. I'm also going to pick the Buffs, and I've also noticed just a different spirit that is around the program right now, and I think part of that is just natural when something like this occurs, a coaching change. You know, you get so bogged down and so just tired of all the negativity surrounding the and once that is lifted, it gives you a kind of, you know, to borrow a Dan Hawkins term, it puts some wind underneath your sails, and so it's been interesting to watch that occur over the last week, and I think the Buffs will be able to build on that momentum that they have from the Iowa State victory and just a more positive feeling around the program in general. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out there and pick the Buffs win this game in a close one, 31-30.
Ooh, okay.
With Eric Goodman kicking the game-winning field goal.
Can't get better than that. Oh, Nebraska's coming up. See you next week.
Nebraska, who's that?
The Huskers.
Aren't they in a different conference?
That's going to be the Big 8 finale.
Yeah.
Final Big 8 game.
You're going to go there on Thanksgiving with me, right?
Big 8. It'll be there.